Welcome to the Informing Choices mini-pod. As our world becomes ever more uncertain with exponential change, punctuated with ever more disruptive events, enterprise governments and third sector organizations are trying to come to terms with creating resilient and flexible policy and strategy. Given that challenge, what role might foresight play in supporting this work? And particularly, what might the role be of intelligent systems to enhance human capability? To discuss the future of intelligent foresight systems, I'm very pleased to welcome entrepreneur and CEO of Finland-based Fibers Online, Panu Kausa, to the podcast. Panu, tell us a little bit about your focus and your business.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you so much for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. In short, I've been a what you might call a practitioner in the fields of strategic planning and foresight for the past and the last 10 years or so, more and more focused on foresight activities, building up those capabilities, both as a consultant first, and now indeed as an entrepreneur of Fibers Online. And Fibers Online, just be brief about that, is a cloud-based digital tool for this specific purpose of continuous and collaborative foresight work, both in corporations and consultancies.
Excellent. And I've seen some of Fibers at work, and I'd just like to say, you know, what a wonderful tool that it is. And I particularly like your approach in terms of supporting collaborative effort. So one of the things that I'm interested in is what are you noticing about how enterprise is exploring foresight? And has there been a bit of a trigger to explore more foresight as a result of the pandemic, do you think?
Indeed. Well, obviously, like we both know, the methodologies themselves have been there for decades. And, you know, in the broader sense of things, I'd say it's fair to say that actual use of foresight methodology has not been, well, it's been sort of limited to, say, deep believers and certainly not that widely accepted, and certainly not systematically practiced in the corporate arena. Well, I dare say that even prior to the pandemic, we've seen overall this approach of foresight gain more and more acceptance, especially in those top corporations. Even, you know, research organizations such as Gartner, the global Gartner organization, quite recently brought what they call continuous foresight. They brought this to one of their hype cycles, stating that indeed foresight is on the rise in corporations. And certainly the pandemic has sort of strengthened this phenomenon. So, you know, raising awareness of scenario planning benefits and so on. Indeed.
If we think through then about applications such as Fibers, how do you think they play into notions of collective intelligence? And I use that phrase because a little while ago I went to an event by Nesta, and they were talking about collective intelligence, the trends and the uses, the deployment of that approach, where we bring technologies like artificial intelligence together with human intelligence to create a better outcome. So you know, what are the kind of roles that you see Fibers playing in that idea?
I think, well, first, even beyond the scope of Fibers itself, I think two things certainly seem to be happening within enterprises that are seeking to, you know, more work with foresight type of approaches. One is, well, the one indeed is obviously applying smart digital tools for, you know, enhancing those capabilities of individuals. But the other one is certainly is that the foresight work is going into a continuous mode, and it's going more into a collaborative, transparent mode. You know, indeed, building upon that collective intelligence of all individuals in the organization. Now, what a tool such as Fibers can do there, you know, just, you know, breaking it down into three overlapping phases or parts of the work, the role of digital tools is perhaps somewhat different in those different phases. One, sourcing for input, sourcing for new knowledge that is out there. And obviously digital tools can automate a big part of that. But what they can also do, and what we do with Fibers as well, is that it can also make it super easy for the individuals to actually contribute and then really building a central via email or whatever streaming manner. So you've got a possibility to accumulate knowledge somewhere. That's for the sourcing of inputs.
Yeah.
Second, there's the sense making part, right? You get a lot of inputs, and then there's the sense making part. And again, a purpose-built digital intelligent tool obviously the tool won't do the work for you, that's for sure. However, if you feel like foresight and futures work in analyze masses of inputs, masses of data, but I think the role here should be primarily to assist the human users with the sense making. And perhaps even more importantly, the tool is such a tool can indeed enable that collective thinking, collective sense making within a given organization, and also within several different specific contexts, in innovation projects, top level strategic questions, and so on. So it's both, it's smart in itself, but it enables that collective work of people. And third, finally, if you had the sourcing of inputs, you've got the sense making part, then there's obviously the sharing and using the new insights where the value ultimately rests. And I think that the biggest value of a tool being used here is indeed with that the data is stored and analyzed. It's always up to date. It's in real time. It's accessible to all employees, not only for learning about those recent insights and whatnot, but also for fast, say, feedback loops when that data is actually being used somewhere. But ultimately, I think it's about enablement of that continuous mode of foresight work throughout the organization, which I think is fundamentally important, and that certainly can be enhanced by easy to use tools.
I'm really curious now about how the sort of the dynamic between the machine element, if you like, and the human element might change going into the future. I mean, you said just now that the system won't do the work, but I have a but. So if we look at how technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning are changing, the ability of machines to make better predictions, then what do you think future system developments we might see, and how might they enhance collaborative futures work, even shifting the point at which humans take over from the machines?
Fair enough. Well, certainly there's a lot that can still be done. We'll probably get you back to the question whether that's smart to go too far, but that's another thing. Hybrid foresight, referring to combining the best of human intuition and machine capabilities. I think we can certainly, with automation and smart, for example, language technologies, can add a lot more value through automation and automated notifications of emerging topics, automatically picking up alternative new points of view to a given topic that's already been addressed, different sets of argumentation, white space identification, whatever. A lot can be automated, a lot can be enhanced. Another point of view, coming to that collaborative element once more, what seems to be not yet there too much in use is, I think, corporations and enterprises could go quite a way of extending those collaborative elements also beyond the scope of their own enterprise, extending that to be it about sourcing of data, be it about sense making, but extending such work across their corporate partners, ecosystems, and so on, instead of their companies alone. And here, once again, I think it's about that interaction between smart, intelligent automation plus the human element of the crowd.
So, having spoken there about a bit about the automation of the process, one of the things that I've thought for a long time is that foresight is increasingly a critical leadership skill. So how do you think the evolution of increasingly automated foresight platforms might play a role in developing foresight as one of these critical leadership skills? What role do you see for foresight in helping people lead organizations better?
Oh, indeed. That's a good point here. Like you already can hear and see me talk. I'm sort of a strong believer, first of all, in the human role, even in the long run. Obviously, the smart tools can go a long way, but it is humans who ultimately need to be making the ultimate sense of those foresight inputs relative to their own business, right? Relative to their own business. It's the human, but most importantly, it's the humans who still need to be taking the decisions here regarding their own choices, whatever they may be, and based on alternative views of the future. And so these all are still human elements, and certainly that learning of these approaches and possibilities indeed is a critical leadership skill in that sense. And that said, or to build upon that, I think that indeed the really valuable foresight in organizations is even primarily based on the working processes, human capabilities, corporate cultures, and the tools are still there to support. I know this may sound funny because I'm a tools vendor, but still, you don't make me a tool believer only by making me a vendor. It just
I understand what you mean.
Now, a couple of points of view to your question, in specific. They should not be overlooked. These type of online tools then almost by default can act as a platform for learning, right? Learning by doing and learning by the best practices that may already have been applied in the tools or by your colleagues working on the same platform, right? So this is almost by default. And perhaps another point here, foresight, futures work, related methodologies are also being taught already in many university, say, strategy classes and similar. And now, if and as professors and students also have the possibility to start taking benefit of such tools already on the university arena, then this will or can result in enhanced capabilities of the students, and again a higher readiness to apply even more developed tools and methodologies once the students actually reach key positions in the corporate world. So at least those points of view are relevant here, I think.
The last question I've got, it involves me actually taking you back one step, because I've been thinking about when you mentioned ecosystems and the way that the intelligent foresight platforms may play a big role in ecosystems and understanding our place in our particular organization within a broader ecosystem. Is that one of the big advantages you see in the future as these platforms develop, that through the use of, I suppose, what we used to call big data, we now have increasingly sophisticated ways of understanding that data to help humans make sense of it?
First, obviously, online digital tools enable the work of distributed teams, right? Yep. Which is crucial. It not only because of the pandemic, but well beyond. We all know this. Global teams distributed wherever they are. Then, well, I suppose this is it's a multifaceted question here, but certainly first, let me try and put this into a context of a simple example. Going further, we could, even automate the creation, the writing of alternative future scenarios. We know there are really advanced language technologies that, and in this setting, because they don't even need to be fact based to a full degree, because we're talking about potential futures. We could, for example, automate this, right? Then two things here. From an ecosystem point of view, I find it interesting, first of all, that we could have a collaborative approach, a discussion on what do you make of these alternative futures for yourself? How do the different parts of the ecosystem today see the potential futures development? Second, well, this doesn't perhaps necessarily require an ecosystem, but once more, getting back to that automation part as well, future scenarios, alternative future scenarios already written out. What we could be doing is also, to a degree, automating, if there are such, the tracking of short-term signposts and other indicators that might help us to evaluate the likelihood of a given future scenario in the long run. And whether you regard this valuable inside a given organization or a collaborative arena, such as a broader arena such as an ecosystem thing, I suppose it ultimately gets back to where it always gets back to, which parts of such insights you deem confidential by nature, strategic by nature, and which parts you'd like to share with your partners.
Panu, that's been absolutely wonderful. That's I think you've articulated some really interesting perspectives that starts to humanize the idea of automating elements of the foresight process. And for me, there are two really big take homes there. One was the idea of foresight and learning by doing, which I absolutely adhere to those thoughts. And the other is the notion of hybrid foresight, bringing human ingenuity and smart machines together to create a better piece of foresight work. Panu, thank you so much for your time. How can people get hold of you and connect with you and find out more about Fibers?
Well, two things. First, my name is quite unique. If you can find me, Panu Kause, it's always me, nobody else. Second, obviously, all my contacts are available at the company website, www.fibersonline.com. And Fibers is Fibres, fibersonline.com.
Panu, thank you once again for your time. That's been absolutely wonderful. Have a great day.
Thank you, Steve. You too.
And thank you, everyone, for listening.